Every single day you're making choices, right? Tea or coffee? Should I spend more time studying or maybe more time with friends? Well, what if I told you there's a way to actually map out those decisions? Like a literal map of your happiness? That's exactly what we're going to break down today.
I mean, it's a huge question, right? How do economists actually know what makes you happy? To figure out why you buy the things you do, they'd have to get inside your head and put a number on your satisfaction. So, how on earth do they manage that?
Well, here's the kicker. The short answer? They don't. And what's even crazier is they don't have to. And that's the brilliant insight that totally changed modern economics. See, instead of trying to measure happiness, they figured out a way to simply map what we prefer. Okay, first up, the problem with choice. Now, to really get why this was such a huge deal, we gotta look back at the old way of thinking about satisfaction, or what economists call utility, and why, frankly, it was kind of flawed. Okay, so on one hand, you had this old idea called cardinal utility. The idea here was that you could actually put a number on happiness. Like, you get 10 utils of joy from a slice of pizza and maybe 8 utils from a burger. But, who actually thinks like that? Nobody. That's where the new idea comes in, ordinal utility. It's way more realistic. It just says, look, you can rank your choices. You know you prefer the pizza over the burger, but you can't say by exactly how much. It's just a preference, not a measurement. So that leads to a pretty big question, right? If we can't use these made-up utils of happiness, then how in the world can we build a scientific model of how people choose things? All right, section 2, a map of happiness. The answer came from a super simple but really powerful visual tool. It's called an indifference curve. And honestly, you can just think of it as a map of your personal preferences. So what is an indifference curve? Basically, it's a line that connects all the different combinations of two things that would make you equally happy. You are, and this is where the name comes from, literally indifferent between any of the points on that curve. So whether it's one bundle or another, as long as it's on that line, your level of satisfaction is exactly the same. Okay, let's make this real. It all starts with a simple table, something called an indifference schedule. Imagine you're choosing between biscuits and bananas. This table just lists out all the different combos that you've told us would make you equally happy. So, for example, you'd be just as satisfied with 1 biscuit and 12 bananas as you would be with, say, 3 biscuits and 5 bananas. Same. And when we plot those points from the table onto a graph, boom, we connect the dots and we get this curve. This single line is a visual map of that specific level of your happiness. But of course, you don't just have one level of happiness, right? You have a whole bunch of them. So you actually have an entire map of these curves. And here's the key. The higher the curve, the more it's up and to the right, the happier you are, simply because you're getting more of both things. So the goal of the game, for any of us, is to get to the highest indifference curve we possibly can. Okay, on to our next section, the rules of preference. Now, for this whole map thing to actually make sense, it has to follow a few simple rules. And these aren't just random rules somebody made up. They're based on common sense ideas about how people actually behave. So, there are really just 3 main rules of the map you need to know. First, these curves always slope downwards. Second, they're always bowed inwards, which is a fancy way of saying they're convex. And third, and this one is the big one, they can never ever cross. Rule number 1 is super straightforward. The curves have to slope downwards because of trade-offs. Think about it. If you got more biscuits and more bananas, you'd obviously be happier, right? Well, that would put you on a whole new, higher curve. So to stay on the same curve, to keep your satisfaction level the same, if you get more of one thing, you have to give up some of the other. It's that simple. Now for rule number 2. Why are the curves bowed inwards? Well, it's because of something with a long name. The diminishing marginal rate of substitution. I know, it sounds super complicated, but the idea is actually really simple. The more you have of something, the less you value it. So let's say you have tons of bananas, but only 1 biscuit. You'd probably be willing to give up a whole bunch of those bananas just for one more biscuit. But if you have tons of biscuits and only a few bananas, you're not going to give up many of those precious bananas to get another biscuit. See, the curve's shape just shows how your willingness to trade changes. And now we get to the most important rule of all. Seriously, this is the one that makes the whole thing work. Rule number 3, preference maps can't cross. Ever. So if curves could intersect, it would create a massive logical paradox. Let's take a look at why this picture right here is showing something that just can't happen. It completely breaks the logic. Okay, let's break this paradox down. Look at point C, where those two curves cross. Now, on the blue curve, point A and point C give you the same amount of happiness, right? They're on the same line. And on the red curve, point B and point C also give you the same happiness. So if A equals C and B equals C, then logically, A should equal B. But just look at the graph. That makes no sense. Point A clearly has way more of good Y than point B does. You would always choose A over B. It's a total contradiction. And that's the proof for why these curves can never, ever intersect. All right, next section, facing your budget. So up until now, we've been talking all about what you want. We've built this beautiful map of your preferences. But as we all know, wanting something and being able to actually afford it, well, those are two very different things. So now it's time to bring reality into the picture, your budget. So what's a budget line? It's basically the boundary of what's possible for you. It's a straight line that shows all the different combinations of two things you can buy, given your income and their prices. Anything on that line or inside of it, you can afford. Anything outside it? Nope, that's off limits. And just like we did with our preferences, we can start with a simple table. Let's say you've got 50 rupees to spend. Gel pens are 10 rupees each, and dot pens are 5. This table just lays out all the combos you could buy if you spent every last rupee. You could go all in on dot pens and get 10 of them, or go the other way and get 5 gel pens, or, any mix in between. And again, when we plot those affordable combinations on a graph, we get our budget line. And notice, it's a perfectly straight line, and that's just because the prices don't change. This line represents your hard limit. It's your economic reality. Okay, part 5, finding the sweet spot. This is it. This is the grand finale. We're about to take our map of what we want, those indifference curves, and put it together with our map of what we can actually afford, the budget line. And where they meet, we're going to find the single best choice we can make. So let's put it all together now. On one side, we have our map of preferences, which is all about what we want. On the other side, we've got our budget line, which is all about what we can afford. It's wants versus reality. The perfect choice has to be where these two things come together. And this image just shows it perfectly. The optimal choice, what economists call the consumer's equilibrium, happens right there at point E. But why there? Well, it's the spot where the budget line just kisses the highest possible indifference curve you can reach. Look at other points you can afford, like G or H. Sure, they're on your budget line, but they're on a lower indifference curve, which means less happiness. And what about that super high curve up top? Yeah, that would be great, but it's totally outside your budget. So point E is the sweet spot. So here's the big takeaway. This consumer's equilibrium is the point of maximum satisfaction. And it happens where the slope of your indifference curve, which is really just what you're willing to trade, perfectly matches the slope of the budget line, which is what the market forces you to trade. When those two things line up, you've found the absolute best choice you can make. So why does any of this matter? Look, I know it can seem like just a bunch of lines on a graph, but this is the fundamental building block for understanding basically all of consumer behavior. It shows how your personal preferences crash into real-world prices to create demand. It's this elegant little model that helps explain not just your choices, but the massive economic forces that shape our entire world. So the next time you're in a store trying to decide between two things, just remember, you're not just making a choice. You're actually solving for your own personal equilibrium.